some individual bondholders are threatening to take legal action against the government for including them in the controversial debt exchange program. They say they will eject and refrain from complying with the mandatory deadline imposed under the domestic debt exchange program. The bondholders say the government's domestic debt exchange program has taken away their wealth and livelihoods since a chunk of their investments are in the government's bond. So this is the statement they have released, and it says the government of Ghana has announced that under its domestic debt exchange program, individual bondholders are to submit to a voluntary arrangement to exchange their domestic bonds for new benchmark bonds. This arrangement irreversibly takes away the wealth and livelihoods of direct and indirect individual bondholders whose only crime has been to trust their government. Tied to this is a mandatory deadline which compels holders to either accept the government's offer or risk the threat of prohibitive losses. In an unfortunate, oppressive fashion, government has shown total disregard for the contractual rights of individual bondholders and has made no effort to structure reasonable consultations with individual bondholders. In the process, we have been presented with painfully stark, improvising and unsustainable choices, a situation deeply troubling and wholly untenable. This is only responsible or possible because of the absence of effective representation and the perceived ease of oppression a dispersed section of investors into submission. So I've been joined on Zoom by the convener of the Individual Bondholders Forum, Senor Hosi, to throw more light on this issue. Senor, good afternoon. Welcome to Newsbeat. What's the Individual Bondholders Forum about, and what do you really do?
We're actually providing legal negotiation and also public advocacy representation as well as education for individual bondholders who are exposed to government of Ghana bonds, the local bonds, the local city bonds, the ESLA bonds, the Dachi bonds, as well as the Euro bonds. And all those who also have investments in the mutual funds like M-Fund, Tessa Triple T, Stanley or Stanbic fixed income, all the mutual funds, everyone is exposed to it. Unfortunately, we do not have a situation where individual bondholders have visibility out on the table for their interests to be effectively represented. And as you can see, it's come across like a take it or leave it. But what exactly is the crime of all these individual bondholders? They have trusted their government, first of all, to empower government with the authority to administer their economy. Beyond that, they've also trusted them to also carry on one of the fundamental principles in finance, that instruments issued in local currencies are risk-free if they are issued by the government. They have trusted their government. They have funded the policies of government. And after years of building their savings to be able to sustain their lives, to be able to manage their livelihoods, you wake up one morning and wipe out over 60%, subject to what kind of holding you have, just overnight. It's not a sustainable and responsible thing to do without proper engagement with these individual bondholders.
Right.
It's quite a sad situation. One thing we all forget is that individual bondholders are already taking a hit. We're already taking a haircut. We are the ones who go out there and still pay the extra VAT that has been brought. We are the ones who still have to pay the extra, what do you call it, e-levy that we have to take. Because now, if you at 100, you still have to pay. The increased taxes that have come, we take the hit for it. There are some of the papers that just don't make sense.
Right.
You take something like the ESLA bonds. The ESLA bonds are not impaired. So why do you want to punish individual bondholders who do not have adequate visibility and understanding of the economic paradigm and operations of public governance? They just trust their government.
Right.
All right. When the opposition was saying that we're borrowing too much, what did our government try to tell us? That they were in charge. All we did was to trust our government. And the least that government must do is to undertake the foremost guiding principles under the Business and Human Rights Charter in the United Nations, and protect the rights and assets of its people.
Right. Senor, let me come in here. Now, government described the debt exchange program as a last resort to save the financial sector. Could there have been any better approach than this?
Of course, there are better approaches. Everybody wants the easy and lazy way out, and that's what our governments have been doing. And I don't think that we can continue that way. Politicians live their large life. They take the mandate to manage our space. They mismanage it and turn around and tell us to always pay. Why do we as citizens always have to be at the wrong end of the bargain every time? No, they are the first people to take the hit. You must not look at your fiscal table, look at government expenditure, reduce it, cut out projects that you can't manage. Now let's look at the revenues that we are losing. Look at the Auditor General's report. Look at the resources that we have and the negotiations that we are ill managing. We have oil. We have Ernst & Young. Sorry, not Ernst & Young. We have ENI in there. ENI has its production reducing, again because of government's own intervention. You look at other fields that could have been up, that could help generate government revenue. You look at the exemptions that government has been given at the ports. You look at the mismanagement at the ports. You look at the mismanagement across various sectors and the waste. Government increased in state-owned enterprises from 86 to 177 since 2017. I mean, why? Right. Who is paying for it? You pay for it, you live your large life, and now you want the poor 66-year-old woman who is not depending on these investments she has built since she was 30 or 25 to feed herself, to pay her last school fees, to pay her medications. They're telling her that you can't have access to it. How wicked and insensitive can we be? The impact of this thing for individual bondholders is catastrophic. And I think that as a collective, we must come together and fight this, have this structure relooked. There is some possible negotiation that I could have where there's a win-win for everybody. Because yes, you may look at it as some challenge, but it must be equitable. It must be sustainable for the people you represent. So the question to the government, who do you represent? Right. And to to everybody who has these investments, our advice is simple. Reject it, reject it, reject it. If your banks are reaching to you, asking you to give them the consent, first of all, know that your bank itself has not even granted its own consent. So forget it. Don't give your own consent. Because most of the banks, when they accept it, they are in crisis. We are in super crisis because we have nobody to come and underwrite our exposure. We are not going to benefit from any financial stability fund. It's not going to happen. We are going to suffer our own. So guys, everybody who has an investment in some mutual fund, anybody who has an investment in a bond, we are asking you and advising you, reject it. Government must honor its part of the contract. It cannot just voluntarily reject or refuse to. That's why they are coming back to you, forcing you to accept that they can run away. We are rejecting it till we negotiate and agree something that's meaningful for all of us. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senor Hosi, for speaking to us.